Just a moment, I'd like to welcome you all to another meeting of the Coronado Roundtable. Christian Escalon, the president. So this will be a very special presentation, which we'll get into shortly. But now that you're about to be seated, I'll have you stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could have you ask you to silence your mobile phones. And as I think most of you know, our programs are recorded for Zoom. If you're at home, if you could please mute your computer or device, please turn off your camera. And you can use the chat box for the question and answer portion of the program. And for all of that, we'd like to thank library staff, and we have with us Andrea, who's doing this before. And we'll know later when the program is available on YouTube, or you can just check the library's YouTube under the title of the program. Our coffee is again provided by Alex from the library coffee cart. So for that, we do ask for a $3 donation. But this morning we have a very special program, one that we hear about virtually daily about artificial intelligence. And our speaker will be the retired Captain Gary Eckert, who will come up shortly. But before we move on to that, I'd like to mention that our speaker and presentation next month, on June 28th, will be Esther Valdez Clayton, will be speaking on the subject of immigration. So please note that, June 28th. And here to introduce Captain Eckert is our own board member emeritus, Cliff B.
Thank you, Christian. It's nice to be with you folks today. And what a great turnout of Coronado Roundtable members and guests. And then we have some Zoomers who are also with us today. Well, last month we had the pleasure to listen to Admiral Charlie Martolio talk to us about American security. And during his presentation, Admiral Martolio mentioned AI, artificial intelligence. And today we're going to have the opportunity to explore it in much greater depth. It's really a sincere pleasure this morning to introduce our speaker, my friend, personal friend, who will be here, Captain Gary Eckert, United States Navy retired. Gary is a graduate of the University of Southern California with degrees in mechanical engineering and naval science. This was followed by his service as a naval aviator with over 3,000 hours of flight time. He is a qualified carrier pilot and retired as the commanding officer, BAW 1285 Naval Air Station, Miramar. When Captain Eckert stepped aside from his naval service, he had a 30+ year experience in the private sector. This involved a variety of technology positions, including software development, data center design, data network design, plus contract negotiations with the 2000, with Fortune 2000 companies. Gary has had senior executive positions with 3 entrepreneurial technology companies, with his last position serving as president and CEO of Politics Incorporated. As a technology hobbyist, in quotes, he builds all of his own computers, and he conducts software evaluations to keep up with current technology trends. Gary's been following the development of AI-based applications, and he personally uses artificial intelligence-based tools to better understand the benefits of AI. So again, I really want to say what a pleasure it is to introduce Captain Gary Eckert to our Coronado Roundtable.
Good morning. It'll work. There we go. First I want to leave your fears. I'm not going to come up here and do a bunch of technical stuff. This presentation is really geared towards you as a layperson understanding what AI is, how it came about, and how it benefits you, and what the potential dangers in your daily life it can present. So let's sit back and enjoy some examples of this technology and sort of how it came about and how it impacts you and why it's such an important topic today. Okay, first, I think just a general definition of what artificial intelligence is. It basically is training machines to do the work that humans normally would perform. And this involves training the machines, providing software or whatever to teach it how to do a specific task. And then as it evolves, it learns from its experience and can actually reprogram itself to continue to learn how to do something better. A lot of people think AI has only been in the news for maybe the last couple of years. This is a new thing. Well, actually, AI got started back in the 1950s, and you might have heard back, like in the 60s, where this big IBM computer beat a chess champion in chess for the first time, and that was again an example of an AI application, where the computer was trained in how to play chess. They finally beat a human opponent. Robots in the assembly line for automobiles came into being back in 1961. So, again, that was an application specific to using robotics to do a task that people would do and do it quicker and without errors. Most of you are familiar with your cell phones, the applications Siri or Alexa at home. These are some of the first examples of where AI was used to understand the human voice and to be able to respond to a command that you gave it and give you either information back or do a task. So why all of a sudden is there a huge interest in AI today? Well, primarily, before I get there, let me just define something here. There are 3 levels of AI. There's what they call narrow area AI, which is sort of the example of a single purpose robot that's trained to do a specific task. Even some of your tasks like Alexa and whatever is in some regards still a narrow area AI application, although it's been augmented by the ability to understand speech. General AI, which is sort of where the interest is today, is an AI that basically is close to exhibiting the intelligence of a human being. And so it has the ability to learn, it has the ability to adapt, and it has the ability to do things based on a command and generate an output as opposed to just doing a specific task. The final level is super intelligence AI, and that's theoretical. We haven't gotten there yet. That's something way off in the future. But that's where the AI is actually smarter than we are and can do things that we can't do, and is capable of basically doing things on its own. So that's sort of way off in the future, and we're not going to worry about that quite today. So there's certain technologies that you've heard about perhaps with AI that are driving this technology. And there's the two technologies are large language models. These large language models are what are training the AI to be able to understand human input. So when you give it a command, or if you put a textual input in, it can read that and understand what you're asking for and then give a response. So this involves a lot of training and it's interesting that the AI isn't really intelligent in the fact that it understands, like you learn a language, you understand when somebody speaks that language to you, you understand it, but is trained to look at all of the millions and billions of iterations of human speech and what is the if you say this word, what's the most likely next word that would be, and what would that next word likely be to that in the context of what you're asking it. And so it basically isn't really all that smart, but it's just trained to be able to determine what you are saying and then respond appropriately. Artificial neural networks are basically the mechanics of the computers and whatever else that are the AI that are used to try to mimic the way that the human brain thinks. And so by doing that, we can hopefully get to the point where you can train the AI, and the AI can then take that training and adapt, as a human would, as they get more experience to do bigger, better things. So why all of a sudden the big interest in AI? Well, there's one thing that's really caused that, and that's the introduction of ChatGPT back at the beginning of last year. ChatGPT was a application that was developed by the OpenAI group that was originally founded with Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Sam Altman's still there as the CEO. Elon Musk has since left. And it was heavily financed by Microsoft. Microsoft made a $10 billion investment in the company to help them develop their first product. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So basically what that means, and this is what's different about this type of AI than before, is this trained on a bunch of information, and then based on input to it, it can export a generated response in response to that input. So the original ChatGPT, which was released to the public, was in November of 2022. Subsequent to that, it was updated to ChatGPT Plus, actually based on what they call GPT-4, which is sort of the current version that's out there, which was released in March of 2023. So very, very recent. This slide here, all it really shows is sort of how quickly the training of these applications has evolved. Back in, in the original version of GPT-1 back in 2018, it had 117 million parameters that it was trained with. Fast forward to the release of GPT-4 in March of 23, was the parameters it was trained on were estimated to be 8 trillions. And actually, latest data showed that about 1.8 trillion pieces of information was trained on. The next version of ChatGPT, which is going to be ChatGPT 5.0, which is scheduled potentially for release as early as November of this year, is going to have 10 times the parameters of ChatGPT-4. So you really think the thing for this group to know is that the reason why this is important is basically this brought AI to the masses. You as an individual can go on to a either, and the two easy things, you can get the app directly from OpenAI, but you can also, because of the association with Microsoft and ChatGPT, they offered access to the ChatGPT through their Bing search engine on the website. And so it was called Bing Chat. It's currently been renamed to Copilot. And maybe some of you have noticed on your last updates on your computers at home that there's a little icon on the screen which represents Microsoft Copilot. They are trying to get people to click that button and try out the ChatGPT application, essentially. Well, what can you do with it? Well, if you ever wanted to be an artist like Rembrandt, you can create a picture that's done in the Rembrandt style just by telling it, ChatGPT, draw me a picture of a horse in Rembrandt style, and it will give you 4 images within a matter of seconds of this horse that's painted in the Rembrandt style. One of the first things I did when I tried this out, I said, okay, I'm going to be doing a presentation on AI. Give me a PowerPoint presentation. Give me 15 slides and talk about the, I gave us a topic. And in a couple of minutes, it generated a whole list. Here's slide 1, here's slide 2, here's slide 3, all the bullet points. And it asked me, do you want me to add illustrations? So basically, when you think about it, right now, this technology has given you as an individual the capability to basically tell it what you want, and it will do its best to give it to you. You want to tell it, well, I want to write a poem, and the poem has got to be about, a dog and a horse and a meeting in the forest and how it developed into a friendship. 5 seconds later, you've got a poem, and it basically has all those elements in it. And if you don't like it, you just tell it, well, hey, I'd like you to include this, or I want you to change that. A couple seconds later, it's changed. So if you want to write a book, you can just say, well, here's the plot of my book, here's the characters, whatever I want a book. Give me a 2,000-word story about this. And a couple minutes later, it prints it out. So, I mean, it really has changed the landscape, because now when you think about it, what's the impact on the people that do that for a living? Now, all of a sudden, you don't need them. If you want, for example, you're starting a new business or whatever, you need a website. Well, what do you do now? Go out and you hire a website designer and spend the money for all this stuff. Now you just tell ChatGPT, I need a website. I want it to have these things. And boom, it creates it. And you just publish it on the web, and you're the way to go. So it's provided a tremendous amount of power to the individual to do all sorts of things that normally they relied on other people to do. And I'll show you some examples as we go along, some of these kind of things that it can do. Obviously, Microsoft is in competition with Google. Google came out with their own ChatGPT simile, which was called Bard originally. When Bard was released to the press for the first time, one of the people asked it a question and said, "Well, what was the first space telescope to discover a planet outside of our solar system?" And it gave an answer that was correct in the sense that that telescope did discover planets outside, but it wasn't the first. And because it was a wrong answer, the public reaction was, well, this isn't very good. And their stock went down $100 billion the next day. So, so they basically said, well, we need to rethink this. And so they went back to the drawing boards and fixed some stuff in Bard and renamed it Gemini. And in the first demo of Gemini, they basically, somebody asked the question, well, give me a picture of our founding fathers. Well, unfortunately, in this woke environment that we had, where the programming of these things is designed to basically be all inclusive and show diversity, it basically printed pictures of our four, founding fathers, where there was women, people of color, didn't get any of the original founding fathers. Maybe he hit another $100 billion. And they went back to the drawing boards. And even today, if you go on there and say, I want you to draw me create a picture of a white man walking on the beach, it won't do it. It'll basically give you a message and say, we're currently redoing our software to, to accept your request. But before, it was basically programmed not to do anything if you asked for something with a white person in it. It would do people of color, because that's considered, but it wouldn't do, white people. So that was sort of an interesting thing. So, why is ChatGPT so popular? Well, believe it or not, when the first week that it was announced, it was 100 million downloads for this application. So that was the just the area of interest there. It's an excellent test taker, so students or whatever, loved it for, students, they would basically say, oh yeah, I got an assignment to write an essay on, the impact of the Romans and whatever. And ChatGPT would generate that in a matter of minutes, they turn that in. But basically, when it first came out, it was capable of scoring at least 1,400 on an SAT test. Now it's up to over 1,500. It can easily pass the bar exams, pass medical exams. It's trained in all that stuff, and so again, for people, it can actually use the fact that it knows all that stuff to prep themselves for the same exams that they're taking themselves. They can use the ChatGPT on how to support better on these tests. Basically, it can write stories, it can write articles, it can do just about anything. And an interesting example I'll give that's sort of an illustration of both good and bad of AI. How many of you used to get Sports Illustrated? Nice, answer. Well, Sports Illustrated went digital. They don't have the paper version anymore. Well, it was recently revealed that some of the articles of the digital edition version of Sports Illustrated, the stated author and the article was all generated by AI. It wasn't a real person. It was just, hey, I need an article on, Boston Red Sox versus New York Yankees. And, the AI would spit the article out, and they assigned it to, some guy, Sam Elliott, or whatever his name was. So, they got us obviously some trouble for that. In business, AI can look at spreadsheets and data and whatever else, tons and tons of data, and summarize that data in just minutes, where it would take analysts, hours, weeks, months sometimes to do an analysis. The AI can do that in a matter of minutes. So, it really has a lot of positive uses in business to speed up things and to make it more insightful in the data analysis itself. One thing that it can do that I think has both positive and negative impacts is it can generate computer code. It's fluent in the 9 or 10 most common computer languages, and you can just tell it, I need a Python coded application that does whatever, and it will write the code for it. So that's really great for maybe, and it can also look at code that you've already generated, like a software programmer can write code. If he's having a problem with it, it's not working right, he'll just give the code to ChatGPT and say, what's wrong with this? How can it be better? And ChatGPT will analyze it and say, oh, you need to change this or change that, and it works correctly. So that's good in that perspective. But on the other hand, you don't need a programmer anymore to do this. You can just add ChatGPT to write the program for you. And most people aren't going to do that. But some people that maybe have, more bad intentions will say, well, write me a code that will identify people and all their security numbers on the internet. Okay, well, that'll do it. So, so basically, again, the one big advantage of this technology is that it gives individuals tremendous power to do things that they relied on other people to do before. But the bad thing is, well, those same people can, use it for, applications that aren't necessarily good. So right now, anybody can generate new content, whether it's pictures, sound, video, computer code, any of that kind of stuff. The AI can do it for them. And the interesting thing is because the way the models are trained, the first GPTs that came out were only trained on data like up until the end of 2021. So if you asked it a question, for example, about the Ukraine war, it wouldn't give you a response because it didn't know anything about that. Well, the integration of the ChatGPT with like Bing and with Google is that now they can tie the internet into that. So anything it can't find in its training, it'll go out to the internet and find. So it's pretty impressive. And anyway, so this technology has been now being implemented by a variety. Meta, Facebook people, they have their own large language models that they're developing. Just about anybody you can think of that's big in the tech industry is adapting this type of technology. Here's an example. I was just playing around. I said, okay, and this is with the big chat. I said, do a picture for me of a white horse laying on a bed in a castle, in a luxury room with a princess. It generated 4 pictures, and this was one of them. Like I said, let your imagination go wild. Now, there are supposed to be guardrails on this technology so that if you ask it to do something that would be considered risque or overtly sexual or whatever else is supposed to prevent you from doing that. But there are ways around it. And if you go online and you ask a search, well, I want a AI application that will generate pictures of X, where X can be anything. That. Here's another example. I mean, you can let your imagination go wild, and these aren't canned pictures. It's created on the fly based on your input. Here I asked it, I'm interested in stocks and whatever. Tell me what the top stock performers were for 2023, and it basically listed the top 5 and gave me links to their performance charts and whatever. And so instead of going through the typical Google search thing where you had to read through 15 line items where they're trying to sell you something, it just gave you the answer that you wanted, gave you links. So the search tends to be a lot more relevant and specialized and can be as specific as you want. So obviously, as time has gone on, there's been some rapid changes in the ChatGPT capabilities. In addition for doing images and text creation, it now has some ability to do video. Although I'll show you an example of this video application, which has not been released to the public yet, primarily because of concerns about the impact it's going to have on the film industry and whatever else, because I think when you see the example I'm going to show you, you'll understand why. You can actually use images as inputs instead of text. So you can basically, put a picture, give a picture to the application and say, tell me what this picture is of, or you can say, take this picture and add X, Y, Z characteristics to it, and it will do it. Also, in addition to the normal voice input, it's now doing voice outputs. So I'll show you an example of that, and that's an area of both concern and again a plus. I mean, think of one of the applications for like ALS people is it takes right now with the current technology 8 seconds to 15 seconds of audio recording of somebody's voice to basically recreate that voice in AI. And then, so for like an ALS patient that's losing their ability to talk, they can basically take a recording of their voice. Then they can just text on their computer and it will speak in their voice to their friends. Unfortunately, this technology can also be used for nefarious purposes. I don't know how many of you might have in your bank. One of the things that a lot of banks have now when you log in is that they say, they'll say, my voice is my password. They'll ask you to repeat that, and then they'll basically give you access to your account. Well, think of somebody that basically says, well, I just called Gary and I got his answering message and I just recorded his voice. Now I converted it. And now I'll call his bank and I'll basically say, okay, my voice is my password in my voice. And all of a sudden they have access to my bank. So again, there's pluses and minuses to this technology. You've probably heard the story about the person that got called and their relative was across the border, they were in panic, I've been kidnapped, you got to send me money, whatever else, and it's in their voice, and so I got to save this person, send them money. It's a scam. And I actually have a friend of mine whose father got a call supposedly from his nephew over the border, and he sent them money, trying to get them back, and it turned out just a total waste. So anyway, the other thing that like I mentioned before, ChatGPT 5 is coming, and this is really, people are really waiting because when it's trained on 18 million different parameters and whatever else, it has all this technical capability. In fact, one of the things that I'll show you an example of, GPT 4.0, not 4.0, but 4.0 just came out this last week, was announced. And it has the capability to do text, voice, video, input and output. And it's just amazing what it can do. I'll show you some examples, I think, that'll sort of illustrate that technology in a second here. And they can also now remember your conversation. So if you start a chat thing with about a particular topic, and then you drop it for a week, and you go back and say, hey, remember when I was telling you or asking you about this? It will remember and it will pick up your conversation in the future. So the fact that the OpenAI application was open source, meant that they could share that with other companies, and there's been a lot of development in this space, and so there's a lot of effort being put into developing this ChatGPT technology. But it's not cheap. The training for ChatGPT 3.5 was $63 million. Yes, to pay for the hardware and whatever to generate all the computations and whatever to do that. And they're using primarily what used to be high-end video game GPUs, graphic processing units, to do this training, because it's equally adaptable for that. And so NVIDIA, their stocks way up the roof. They're sort of the premier leader in that technology, and so they're selling a lot of special purpose GPUs to the industry to do this AI training. So here's some current AI research that's going on. And I'm going to show you some of this. Sora by OpenAI is basically a text to video application where you basically put a text prompt and then generate a video in accordance with that. And I'll show you an example here, but I encourage you to go online and just do a search for Sora and see some of the things that it's capable of doing. Right now, it's limited to only producing 1 minute of video because, again, they don't want to scare the Hollywood. But anyway, and then VASA 1 by Microsoft is another interesting technology. They can take an individual picture, digital picture, it can be an AI generated picture or it can be a person's regular digital picture of a person from your cell phone. Add an audio track to it, and I won't spoil the surprise. I'll let you see it when we see the example. Google, again, trying to keep up with everybody else, basically has this new VO application that they just announced last week that allows them to generate high definition videos from text, image, or video prompts. And Project Astra, which is another Google thing from their DeepMind company that they bought from the UK, is basically an example of the next generation AI assistant, like if you're used to Siri and Hey Google or whatever else. It's a little bit different. I'll show you an example of that. It's pretty impressive. Okay, hopefully this will work. This is a Sora text-to-video example, and the prompt for this was to fly through a museum with paintings and sculptures, in different styles. So that's the only text info that it was given to create this video, and this is what it did. Pretty impressive for a simple text prompt to get that kind of
Did it
video.
choose the music also?
I'm sorry?
Did it choose the music also?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is a Microsoft application where you have just a digital picture. In this particular case, it's an AI generated picture of a girl there. They added an audio track. But watch what the AI does to the picture while the audio track is playing.
So, sometimes nothing happens and sometimes everything happens all at once and you just kind of deal with it. And it's
All
also
the
just
facial
strange
expressions,
to
head
both be
movements,
extremely worried
all
about
synchronized,
things,
lip sync,
have your anxiety
all with
levels
just an AI.
to the highest they've ever been. And then also be extremely happy and grateful that we were able to buy an apartment.
This is an example of some of the technology for a AI assistant.
see something that makes sound. I see a speaker, which makes sound. What is that part of the speaker called? That is the tweeter. It produces high frequency sounds. Give me a creative alliteration about these. Creative crayons color cheerfully. They certainly craft colorful creations. What does that part of the code do? This code defines encryption and decryption functions. It seems to use AES-CPC encryption to encode and decode data based on a key and an initialization vector, ID. Great. What neighborhood do you think I'm in? This appears to be the King's Cross area of London. It is known for its railway station and transportation connections. Do you remember where you saw my glasses? Yes, I do. Your glasses were on the desk near a red apple.
Oh, that's what that means.
What can I add here to make this system faster? Adding a cache between the server and database could improve speed. What does this remind you of? Schrodinger's cat. All right, give me a band name for this duo. Golden Stripe. Nice. Thanks, Gemini.
So I think you can see that you can see that there's some exciting stuff coming from your applications for your smartphone. A lot of interesting things that could be done here. I saw another demo of this technology where there was like a blind person, and he was on the street, and he basically said, "Hail a cab," and basically he held his smartphone up and it looked for a cab. As soon as a cab was approaching, he said, "Okay, a cab's approaching. You can hail it now." And he stuck his arm up and the cab pulled over. So, using your cell phone as your eyes, is an interesting application. I mean, you could be on a cruise or something, and you're in a town, and you see some church or whatever, and you say, "Well, what is that?" Just hold your cell phone up, and it'll tell you what you're seeing. Pretty amazing stuff. One of the other trends that is happening in generative AI is what they call auto GPT. In the examples we've shown so far, you've actually done an input and then you get an output. In auto GPT, you give it a task, and then the AI generates its own prompts as to how to do all the steps to complete that task, and then you only get the final result kind of thing. And the interesting example here, this is, like I said, very experimental, but one of the use cases is an application called Chaos GPT. And it was given the task of how do you destroy humanity? And it's interesting, I encourage you to look this up, because it basically, it'll give you the outline for what it came up with. These are the steps that I need to take to eliminate humanity. And then it's working on each of the individual steps that it has to do with how to accomplish it. So, interesting stuff. So obviously with the AI applications and this generative AI, which is so popular right now, there's a lot of pros and cons. Certainly it can automate a lot of routine tasks. It can increase efficiency in businesses. It can save a lot of time and money in your personal life. Trying to do some sort of task, it can do it faster for you. The summarization abilities are really great. I mean, you can give me a summary of a book, and it will basically, give you a very detailed summary so you understand exactly what the main points of the book were. And you don't have to read the whole thing. Certainly, the ability to create your own content is very amazing, and it has the potential to, hopefully eliminate bias. Because you basically are supposed to be or whatever. I don't really find that to be the case, but it has the potential for doing that. And it also allows people that don't have a particular skill set, like they don't know how to code, or they don't know how to build a website, or they don't know how to write a newspaper article or whatever, they can do it. So you look at the implications of that for people, on the one side is positive because they qualify to do jobs that they wouldn't have been qualified to do originally, but they can do that with the technology help. But then again, the people that have those jobs, and they're getting highly paid for those jobs, businesses may decide, well, I don't need to pay you, $200,000 a year to do this job. I can bring another person in that just goes and spends their time on ChatGPT all day long and gets all the same results for a much cheaper price. One of the other, on the con side, it's not 100% accurate. You've heard about hallucinations. That's another thing that AI does. And hallucinations, what it does is you can ask it a question and it will come back with an answer, what it thinks is the right answer, and it will give you all sorts of backup data and whatever else. You think, boy, this thing is smart as all get out, but you find out that all the stuff that it used was incorrect. So it's only trained to respond. It doesn't have the ability to actually know if it's right or wrong or not. It just regurgitates what it's been, trained on. There's still a lot of bias, because if you're using the internet as your training source, we all know that there's bias on the internet. So if you ask it a question that has, either political implications or technical implications, whatever else, it can give you a skewed answer. One of the things I thought was interesting is one of the areas I think that AI is really has tremendous potential is in the medical field, because AI is much better at looking at mammograms and detecting early cancers. They can do it 44 to 50% better than a skilled doctor can do. They developed a artificial nose. I mean, some people probably know that dogs have the ability to smell cancer in people. Well, they've developed an AI-powered artificial nose that can sniff a person's breath and tell if they've got cancer. Remarkable accuracy. But an interesting thing on the bias thing, they were doing a radio, looking at X-rays, of various people, and they specifically said that you can't give any patient information as far as their race or whatever else. And it asked AI to do an evaluation of all these radiographs, and in 93% of the cases, it correctly identified the race of the person just from the X-rays. So, so the concern about this kind of stuff is that when you ask AI to do things like for insurance companies, insurance companies are always doing risk analysis. Well, AI might take all that analysis and still, do something from a job hiring perspective or rates for an insurance policy. One of the things that Amazon ran into, they basically used AI to do some of their employment screening and whatever. Well, the AI had been trained on all of the people that Amazon had been hiring. Well, the AI noticed that the majority of them were men. So basically, when it picked, either the AI went to pick who was going to be hired, they only picked men because the AI wrongly assumed that Amazon just preferred men, so we're just going to hire men. So so the AI can still exhibit some bias. Obviously, code can be used by criminals. for various purposes. And that's a real challenge. And I think the fact that the media can be manipulated so much, and the outputs of videos, the text, the technology where you can take a person's picture, add audio to it, and make it look just like it was them saying that, is problematic. So deep fakes are a real problem. And in fact, I saw a statistic the other day where 35% of global businesses have been the victim of a deep fake attack. And one of the most notable one was a company in Hong Kong. They were doing a Zoom call, and the CFO for this company was deep faked on the Zoom call, and he told one of the subordinates to wire $25 million to this other entity, and the subordinate did it. And it was just somebody that was scamming the company for $25 million. So, and I think the other problem is that because of AI today, people have lost their trust in the media and what they see. And so you got to trust and verify is more appropriate today than it ever has been. And I think from just an individual's perspective, where most of us learn that we needed to learn a skill, we could apply that skill and whatever else. Well, now you don't need that skill. You can just ask AI to do it. So you never really learn anything. You just, use a tool to do a task. And so you don't get educated yourself. You're relying on, the software, whatever to do it for you. So here's an example of a deep fake thing. Some reasons want me
Let's go there.
I am not Morgan Freeman. What you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So, obviously, there's a lot of AI impacts on society today with all these capabilities. Jobs are obviously potentially impacted. It's been estimated that as many as 30 million jobs could be eliminated and taken over by AI. The government, is already getting actively involved in establishing AI department heads in every department. And they may even, create a department of AI. They just requested $32 billion to help promote and make sure that the U.S. stays ahead of the rest of the world, China and Russia in AI development. Military, there was just very recently AI-powered or controlled aircraft did dogfighting, with human pilots. And in some cases, they actually beat human pilots and dogfighting, and a couple of F-16s or whatever that travel at 1,600 miles an hour. The AI was doing its job. They certainly use AI in reading satellite data because it's much better at identifying potential targets and stuff like that than you and I in many cases. Education is going to be tremendously impactful on education. I mean, right now, if you think about it, you could go and use AI and have AI tutor you in any subject and basically have individual instruction, as you answered questions and whatever, to tell you what was wrong or would encourage you to, think about another way of doing it or whatever. And so I see a lot of ramification in the educational area in that regard. Businesses, obviously, there's a lot there in the finance world. And one of my big concerns when this was initially coming out with AI, because there's a lot of electronic trading that goes on in the stock market. And again, the electronic trading, the AI trading is really geared towards taking advantage of a very short-term trend or something like that. Because if you take $1 billion and you sell something, because it went up for 2% a day, and then so you made a couple of $1 million doing that, or if you sold something short, to do the same thing. The problem is that the rest of the market sees these huge swings and they think, well, this is what the market is doing, and all of a sudden they do the same thing, and really they're defeating their own investment strategy and perhaps getting screwed over. So you have to be cognizant of those things. Healthcare, already mentioned a variety of different things that I think the medical technology is really being augmented. There are surgeries that are being done by robots, AI. I mean, even brain surgery, really technical stuff. And I actually heard a quote recently where they said that sometime in this next year is going to be the first child born that's going to live to be 150 years old, because of the thing that medical will do. Elections, obviously, there's all sorts of ramifications can come in election cycles. Like, prepare yourself for a barrage of AI-generated campaign ads and whatever. Not what to believe, what's true, what's not to be believed. And anybody that thinks in the last election there wasn't some funny business going on the network side of things, or unfortunately, AI has a tremendous capability to influence vote tallies and that kind of thing. So that's got to really be watched closely. Transportation, just logistics for freight and stuff like that. Optimizing supply chain things, automobiles, technology in automobiles for self-driving. There's even been talk recently that the FAA is talking about replacing flight controllers with AI controllers to alleviate the load on their flight controllers in certain areas of the air transportation network. Obviously, media and entertainment. When you create movies and stuff like that with AI, it's interesting that most of the Hollywood studios now are requiring their actors and whatever to be digitized. So your grandkids and their grandkids could probably be watching Mission Impossible 100, with Tom Cruise in 40 years, because the digital version of Tom Cruise can be, incorporated into the movie. So obviously there's a lot of concerns with AI, particularly, for, people that are in the creation business today, creative artists, whatever. They're very concerned about AI being able to do their job better, faster, cheaper. Deep fakes, as we've touched upon. Cost of AI infrastructure, like I mentioned, it costs $63 million to train one of the earlier versions of ChatGPT. Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT OpenAI, basically said that it's going to probably take $3 trillion to get to the next level of AI. Intelligence of the AI is smarter than a human. And that's a lot of money. And just people from an environmental perspective, they talk about global warming and all that stuff. A data center generating this kind of training generates a carbon footprint the same as a small city. So, you know, the more effort you put to generating all this stuff, you actually, you're not necessarily helping the environment. And there's a continuing need for new training data. And one of the things you might have, I don't know how many of you ever used Reddit, which is a social media. They did an IPO here recently. Well, both major tech companies are all, you know, offering them $60 to $100 million each to get access to the data on Reddit. And the reason why that's so popular is that, number one, in Reddit, you're anonymous. You have a username that doesn't identify you by your own name, and you can say and post anything you want there, and people, you know, vote yes, you're positive and negatively, whether they agree or whatever. So they can use that training data to get more nuanced information about how people really think and how they really talk in, you know, in a casual environment. So that data is really of interest to the AI training people right now. So they're willing to spend big money on that. So obviously, you know, the reliance on AI to do work that people have normally done in the past is going to be a concern because obviously jobs are going to be impacted. And the amount of information, misinformation that potentially done is of concern. And obviously there's national security, global competition that has to be taking place, and then government regulation. I don't want to really spend a lot of time on regulating AI because it's still in its infant stages in many perspectives. But there are some questions. I mean, you know, who's legally liable if AI does something that somebody objects to? You know, if a deep fake is done, you know, does the person file for a defamation, and who they file? Is it against the application? Is it against the person that created the application? You know, so there's a lot of questions there that need to be addressed. And as far as current regulation efforts, the EU recently have passed the AI Act in the EU, and they identify a bunch of high-risk tasks that need to be regulated. And the U.S. typically is taking a more hands-off approach. They don't want to stifle, you know, business innovation and whatever, but they are given a lip service, at least that they're doing, so that get off their case about it. China, you know, has basically done things in their AI to make sure that it supports the state and continues to keep people, you know, under their thumb, so to speak. And there has been proposals for moratoriums to try to put a hold to some of this AI development until people really get a grasp on the potential impacts. So obviously, you know, the concerns about over-regulating is or stifle competition. Does it just favor the big tech companies, and our smaller companies going to get, you know, run over by it? How do you enforce this stuff? Anyway, that's it for my presentation.